Spirituality, is something that we practice individually, could we share in a community, but it's mostly our own experience of life. Cannot be really quite measured, right? You cannot measure your beliefs. You cannot measure your faith.
Welcome to Personal Development Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Agi Keramidas, and my mission is to inspire you to take action towards improving your life. In this podcast, I invite myself inside the minds of remarkable people and I distill their wisdom for you. So if you want to find practical insights that you can implement right now, follow the podcast and get the episodes as soon as they are released. Today is a very special episode 350. In this episode, we bridge science and spirituality. By listening to this conversation, you will gain a more holistic understanding by exploring the connections between neuroscience and spiritual experiences. You will also discover how to integrate science and spirituality so you can enhance your mental and physical well-being, build resilience, and better regulate your emotions, especially during times of crisis. This is an enlightening conversation. Let's dive right in. Today I am delighted to speak with Dr. Cristina Leira, PhD, a remarkable individual and also a very dear friend. Cristina, you have a rich and diverse background that spans the realms of language, culture, and neuroscience. Coming from Buenos Aires, Argentina, your journey took you from the world of linguistic translation and teaching to a remarkable career with the United States Navy SEALs. Your unique blend of expertise in language, culture, psychology, and neuroscience has led to a deep passion for bridging the worlds of science and spirituality. And today we will explore the connections between these seemingly distinct domains. Cristina, a heartfelt welcome to the podcast. It's such a pleasure to speak with you.
Agi, it is a pleasure and an honor also to be with you. And I cannot wait to start this conversation to raise awareness.
I was thinking, because we met earlier this year, we almost known each other for a year. We had over 30 conversations during this time, which is, I think, extraordinary. And all that led to this point where we're here discussing about bridging science and spirituality. Before we go there, I briefly said, at the introduction, I briefly mentioned a few highlights, shall we say, of your story. Would you like to share with us one key defining moment in this journey that probably relates very well with this topic that we're going to discuss today?
Absolutely, Agi. My life started pretty much very simple in a way. Raised by a wonderful family, my father, foot doctor, and my mother accompanied my father along through, and they devoted their lives to studying and believed wholeheartedly in education. So that's the way my life started. And then I pursued my studies here in the United States with my master's in applied linguistics. And then I was working with the Navy Special Warfare for almost 26 years. So up until there, seems like pretty linear, my life, right? Like great family, of course, like everybody, ups and downs. And then coming here to pursue my American dream. Then I go to pursue my next dream, which is working with special forces, doing the language and cultural development there. And then something interesting happened. When I thought my life was going to keep being linear, I was forced to pivot. And my program was defunded. So here I am in the middle of my life and thinking that I had this for the rest of my life. And I grew up very religious and spiritual. And at that moment, I tell you, when I was literally devoid of my identity, I felt dying. And I felt like nothing could help me out of there. And I was wondering what happened, right? Well, what happened is that I had identified myself with what I did instead of trying to find who I was, different from what I did or what I have. So, this is in a way for me to express that this is how my next chapter in life started, with a forced pivot. And I started studying something that I always loved, but I never knew much about, which is mindset, the mind, how that works. What makes us resilient? What makes us overcome the worst of our moments when nothing works, when everything that we have outside of us seems to be falling apart? So that led me to the new uh, aspect of my development, which was neuroscience, cognition, instruction, and psychology. So that is how I got where I am today.
Yeah, I liked you said that the realization that what you were and what you were doing, or what you
Yes.
had, the difference, and it's something that I believe many, myself also, I will hold my hand up. Many fall into that trap of thinking in such a way. Uh, I would like to, dive straight in, because I think this is a really important topic, bridging science with spirituality, and I would like to start, because many times we use these terms very easily, or we hear them without taking a moment to reconnect with what it means. So I would like to ask you if you could give us a brief definition of what is science, what is spirituality, that we're about to attempt bridging in this conversation today.
Thank you. A great question. So, science is this systematic, methodical approach to acquiring knowledge, right? It's empirical observation, experimentation, evidence based explanation, objectivity, that you have to be able to repeat it, has to be peer reviewed. That is beautiful. Now, what about then spirituality? Spirituality, well, is something that we practice individually, could we share in a community, but it's mostly our own experience of life. Cannot be really quite measured, right? Cannot be evidence based, like if you do this, then you cannot measure your beliefs. You cannot measure your faith. Well, of course, then we could say, well, what is the difference with religion? And well, religion is more doctrine, is more dogmatic, and is more organized, institutionalized in a way. Now, religion is conformed by spirituality because it's still faith. It's just a different expression, different ways to express faith through an organized system, religion, or through a different type of systems, which could be, for example, meditation or any other type of spiritual practices.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There is, I think, as I said, I believe the definitions are important. I mean, we all have an idea of what we understand by that, but it's also always useful to rehear that. But there is something, sometimes I have heard people talking about merging science with spirituality, and tell me why you use the word bridging instead. What is I know there is a subtle difference there, but tell me what you think.
So, when we think of the symbol of a bridge,
Mhm.
it means that they have two different, in a way, identities,
Yes.
that they don't necessarily coalesce. So, a bridge is finding ways to connect or build connections between two realms, in this case, science and spirituality. They maintain their separate identities, which is navigate, we explore the understanding of the space between them. Merging is more like an intensive integration. It's like trying to blend science with spirituality. So you explore how these two domains can come together to provide a unified understanding, more holistic approach.
That's great. And I think since we have set the tone for the conversation, I think it's also important to discuss why we are talking about this. I mean, what is the real importance? Because for all these centuries, millennia, science, spirituality, each of them had their own place, shall we say. But what are the implications? What are the benefits of bridging the two together?
Beautiful question. And I wish this would be more mainstream
Mm.
because we are, in fact, there is not an attack of, two games, team A versus team B. It's just the reason or the rationale behind the exploration of merging science with spirituality is to have a deeper and comprehensive understanding, have a more holistic understanding of how the universe works and how we place in it our values, reconcile our beliefs, right? Like we may have seemingly divergent perspectives, but by understanding both science and spirituality, we can reduce our cognitive dissonance. What is
Mhm.
cognitive dissonance? When you believe one thing, but then you act in another way, it's like a noise, a mental noise. So by learning to bridge them, we can provide a more coherent worldview. Also, we can also help our health and well-being because there is no doubt that knowing more about science and spirituality will promote our mental and emotional health and definitely will help advance science. Why? Because science will learn about what works better for our betterment and how we can improve our health. And also, we will add more to spirituality. How? Well, the spiritual um, practitioner, well, the spiritual people will also see, like, oh, so then there is some scientific evidence behind the power of prayer, the power of meditation, the power of contemplation, and there is.
There is a lot indeed, and it's coming to the mainstream little by little. And I think that's for me also one of the reasons of the importance of this conversation, because we're adding to that wave, if you want, of this raising awareness of this topic, that it's not two different domains as we have led to believe, or uh, generally is the opinion. Before, there is one other thing I wanted to ask you before we actually dive into the actual bridging. I'm interested to know, I'm curious to know what is you have a personal passion about this. So where does that come from?
It's a deep question because everything in life has to do with our story, right? If we want to learn whatever we want to study in life, it always relates back to something that happened to us that we want to have deeper understanding. In my case, I wanted to learn more about why I made decisions that were detrimental in my life, why I did not follow my intuition, why did I allow other voices to guide me, and because of that, I ended up with choices that detour me from where I wanted to be. And I am thinking very thoroughly what I'm saying because I never said wrong choices. I
Hmm.
never said mistakes. Because one thing that I'm learning and I am making peace with that is that there is no such thing as a mistake, Agi. Nothing. Nothing is really wrong in our universe. It's not possible. It's just a lesson. So whatever we do, whatever we decide, is just a lesson in life. So all this led me to feel like, what is it that how could I learn more about the mind? And that is what led me to neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
And which is, of course, studies the nervous system. And what is the nervous system? It's the brain, the spinal cord, the peripheral nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds very complicated, but it's really who we are. It's like, it's like when we watch TV, you think that the TV is just that screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you disarm it, it's like, oh my God, all these cables. It's just a simple TV we see, but it's comprised of all that. So
Yeah.
neuroscience is that. It's a multidisciplinary approach and combines biology, psychology, physics, chemistry, and helps us understand the structure, the function, the development of our nervous system. But also, and the most important thing, helps us understand our emotion, our behavior, our consciousness. And so that is why, I was so into understanding myself. And then there is another important thing, that I worked with naval special warfare,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see how these people had their mindset ready before deployment, and how they had to train their own behavior, their emotional state, to be in peak performance
Mm-hmm.
and almost zero margin of error.
Mm-hmm.
So all that led me to all this uh, passion for the mind, the mindset, spirituality, neuroscience. It's, in fact, has been a journey to understand me more. And since I believe that we are all one, and it sounds today cliche because we hear that everywhere, we are one. But I truly, truly believe it, that we are one. We are literally, we all, sometimes when I'm about to fall asleep at night, and I have my doubts and anxieties and fears, the same as I have moments of relief or happiness, of celebration. And I'm thinking, every single human being has that at night. We either are celebrating what happened that day, or we are like, anxious about tomorrow. So in the end, that is what I mean, the oneness, that we all have experience when you read poetry, right? When you read
Mm-hmm.
any type of art, when you look any type of art, you realize that in the end, our beliefs, our emotions, our behaviors are pretty much one.
If you're enjoying this episode, can you find one person that you think would add value to and share it with them? I would really appreciate you, and it really helps grow the show and also helps you add value to people you care about. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the episode. There were so many things here at what you were saying. What I find really fascinating was that this desire or need, if you want to understand yourself better, that journey of self-discovery, that's how I describe it for myself. It's fascinating to see that it led you, to study and study all those things, and even reach and do a PhD. And it's fascinating to see, the driver behind this, the driving force, behind this. Um, I wanted to ask you then, because you did mention about neuroscience giving you some answers about, on the questions you had to who you are, to understand yourself better. So can you give me an example of, let's say, one instance that studying neuroscience gave you a personal understanding of an element of yourself?
Yes. For example, I would say in times of adversity, in
Mm-hmm.
times of psychological distress,
Mm-hmm.
neuroscience helps us, and I will not say helps me because that would be too pretentious, helps us all human beings to enhance our coping mechanisms. Why? Because provides us with what happens at the neuronal level
Mm-hmm.
when we're going through uh, stress or trauma, and helps us find ways, at least how the brain reacts with the beautiful neuroplasticity. And what is that? How our beautiful brain changes to adapt to whatever is happening in our lives, right? So by using or by learning how the neuroscience helps us, is the more we can even find better ways to cope. Now, how is it in everyday language? Well, for example, brain imaging, right? So you have the functional magnetic resonance imaging or the electroencephalography that helps us observe the changes in our brain during, for example, meditation. But we also have other studies that help us see how, for example, contemplation or prayer can help us reduce the mind wandering and increase our present moment awareness. And then, for example, well, again, stress reduction, like, for example, with meditation. I keep going to meditation because it's like, I could say prayer, but it's more like towards spirituality, right? Even though meditation doesn't mean that in religion we don't meditate, but helps us, for example, reduce the activity of the amygdala, which is the one that is involved when we have stress or negative emotions. And also neuroscience helps us with understand how we the altered states of consciousness, which happens when, for example, we let go of thinking and we go within, which happens again in contemplation, in prayer, in meditation. You go within, so you alter your state of consciousness, and then you let go of what is happening outside. Well, neuroscience can help us even measure that, how that happens. And of course, the neurochemical changes, right? With the release of neurotransmitters that help us increase our well-being or our mood. And then goes without saying the clinical applications that it could help clinicians or anybody who is open to merge, one and the other, see how the right the spiritual practices can help us treat conditions like depression, anxiety, and chronic pain.
This is fascinating. I would like to hear a bit more of you. Can you expand a bit more on particularly the mental health element and generally the well-being, I would say, but more of through a mental perspective.
Mental health. Well, there is one thing that we don't talk much, and that is mental health. We all want to be, especially now with the digital world, right? We all want to look good. We want to say, oh, we are doing great. The truth is that there is a disconnect between what we see and what we really are going through. So the mental health is about also how we regulate our emotions. And I have conducted a lot of research on that, how the use of spiritual practices helps us learn to regulate better our emotions. Now, interestingly enough, when we are in times of calmness, right? It's very easy to say, oh yes, the only thing you have to do is breathe in, breathe out, and then meditate, go within. Beautiful. The thing that happens when we are going through an anxiety moment or a crisis is different. So there, you don't have time to say, well, I know I have to breathe in, breathe out, because if you try to do that, you will do that, right? So it's like a bank account. We need to put more in the account before we need it, so that when we need to withdraw, we already have it there. So we need to create the practice of building what works for us. What works for us, so that when we are going through a critical moment, we just go there and practice. And that is why we need to practice whatever works for us, right? Some people, meditation works, other contemplation. And I, in my study, I studied religious symbols, and I found that each of the symbols that I analyzed, they had these bodily sensations that help to connect within in different ways. So, for example, incense.
Mhm.
You say incense. Well, yes, incense, because it's when you breathe in, it just goes directly to your neural system as well. But it's what is the symbology behind incense? So you see, nothing is separate. It's an impossibility that things are separate. It's an illusion. It's so interconnected that, for example, incense through the sense of the smell, or sacred bells through the sense of the sound, or sacred music, or touching the rosary, for example, or touching the mandala in the
Mm.
Indian faith. But or some, if you go to Latin America, of course, I'm from Argentina. When you go to the church, you see a lot of people touching the image, and they just touch. They touch the feet of the saint,
Mm.
or the feet of Jesus. They even kiss it, because it is a bodily sensation. All that helps to a mindfulness intervention that benefits us spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and it has to be done prior to the crisis. If we
Mm.
like now, that doesn't mean that okay, I haven't done it and I'm going through crisis. I don't have any options. No, thank God, and I do believe in God, and I like saying thank God. Um, thank God we do have options, because it isn't like you only have one chance in your life, and if you miss it, you're doomed. No, you haven't done it. You don't have the practice built there, but you can learn in times of distress, which is what happened to me. I
Mm.
was not using it before, but then I said, okay, I have option A, I die, because you can die of a heart attack when you're going through extreme stress. And I went through that. Or option B, do something about it. And I did something about it. Now, it's much better to start ahead of time, so that when the crisis comes, you're you're better off than
Mhm.
where I started, which I had to start from zero. I had to read about it, and I couldn't concentrate because I was so nervous. I didn't feel like reading, but I was like, Cristina, read, calm down, meditate. And I was thinking, but how can I meditate when I have to do this and this? So if I humbly can suggest to whoever is listening to this and can feel served with this message, is start before. Start before the moment of crisis, building your own account of what works for you. And for that, you have to do soul search. You see, sometimes what works for you doesn't work for me. So sometimes meditation may not work for you, but going for a walk in the beach may, or just sitting with your back against a tree may, or just listening, I don't know, to some classical music may, or you may even be listening to other type of music. Whatever works for you, build that, so that when you go through darkness, and Aggie, we all go through darkness, we all go, it's what we do about it, or how long we stay there.
Mm.
That's the only difference. So I only always say, make no mistake, everybody, Mother Teresa, Jesus, everybody, and every, like in the Kabbalah, like all different, because I don't want to just mention one religion over the other. No, in all religions, we all humans go through that. It's the moon, right? The dark side and the light. Is how long we stay in the dark what makes the difference.
There were, thank you first of all for this answer. And there were many things. One thing I really liked the analogy you used about, depositing like in a bank account before you need it, before you have that crisis, as you call it. And I also got, and I highlighted, and I think it's important to repeat it, and that the spiritual practices, or practicing some spiritual practices. And thank you also for your last clarification that, for many it is meditation, but it's not only meditation. It is soul searching, you said, and finding out what works for you, what is your the spiritual practice. But what I wanted to say is that the importance of doing that is the ability to regulate your emotions, because really from that, and you gave the example of dying on the spot out of a heart attack because of the crisis you're facing, or being able to regulate that emotional state and do something about it. There was, there is a natural question that comes to my mind now, because we were talking about neuroscience earlier and science and measuring. So, is there some kind of evidence coming up of what is, out of all these different, let's say, spiritual practices, is there one that has measured to be, more effective or more better suited to most people, or am I just asking a question that can't be answered?
Beautiful, Aggie. And the beautiful thing about asking questions is it's just the magic of asking questions. Whether we answer it correctly or not, time will tell. And even time, right? We used to think it was the flat world, right? Then with round. Now we're reading all these fascinating new things about the electric world. So many changes. So it's not about right or wrong questions. The beautiful thing is about asking questions. So, about evidence, I would like to tell you one thing that I'm passionate about many things I'm passionate. I'm passionate about life, but there is this emerging science called neurotheology. And it's a relatively new field and explores the relationship between neuroscience and spirituality. So it seeks to understand how our brain functions and in connection with religious and spiritual experiences and our practices and our beliefs. So neurotheology uses the neuroscientific methods to investigate the neural correlates of religious and spiritual phenomena, which I just needed to mention that because I think it's fascinating. So I think the part I was fascinated with neurotheology, so I interjected that. But I think you were asking me about findings that were related with compelling neuroscientific findings. And that is the beauty. The more we evolve, and technology can be used, as a tool or as a weapon, but when we use it as a tool, it's beautiful. So yes, neuroscience has helped us with the basically understand which parts of the specific brain regions are activated when we have spiritual experiences, and according to which part is activated, it just will lead us to understand more about the complex cognitive and emotional processes. Also, the neuroimaging is helping us understand how spirituality is linked to the dissolution of the self. Like spirituality dissolves the illusion that we're separate, and leads to the feeling of interconnectedness. And also neuroscience is helping us understand better the implications of mystical experiences. Yes, it's fascinating.
Yes, I got the dissolution of the self that you said there.
Yes.
I will ask, because another thing that comes to my mind is, we've been talking for half an hour now about bridging science and spirituality and all the benefits it can bring. But I want to ask also, if we look at the other side, because these two domains, if I can call them that, have been separate for a very long time. Is there, do you think, are there any negative sides into trying to bridge those two things?
Well, I think that it would be a disservice to say there are no negative sides, right? One of them could be, really, do you really want to now find evidence to faith? Really, do you really want to measure what I believe? So there could be resistance to understanding that inviting science to spirituality can be a threat. I would say there is nothing that is a threat when it will enhance our self awareness. Also, imagine learning more and more about how we can regulate our emotions. So, mindfulness, meditation definitely helps us increase our presence. And when we are in the present moment, we can like slow everything down, right? And then make the right decision. So, or the same as stress reduction, compassion, empathy. So, yes, there could be this sense that I don't want science to tell me whether it is or not possible that my belief, my faith, that I believe in this and I believe in that. I don't think that science will put the head in the crocodile's mouth by saying, if I cannot prove evidence that God exists, by the way, God doesn't exist because we couldn't quite prove it. I don't think they would do that. I think that science has many more things to put their tools to work rather than trying to measure what we only see the results. Because faith, how can you measure that? But how can you also tell me that faith doesn't exist? Right? So we see the results of faith. So, yes, reductionism is one of the cons. Or on the other side, science could also say, no, this is like a make believe. In fact, there is no such thing as the spirituality benefits. But again, I think that is not going to go very long because now, again, with neurotheology, neuroscience, and all the wonderful technology that we have, we can see the transcendental experiences have definite impact in our sense of well-being, life satisfaction, and even self-healing.
Thank you. And what came to my mind just now was that I think it's inevitable because we were saying earlier that all is one and we hear that. And if all is one, it's how can we separate one and the other? All of them will be breached or even merged. So it's
Yes.
just a point that came to me. There is one one thing I want to ask you, and it will. I'm smiling because it might probably sound a bit contradictory, but I would like to ask for some practical advice because we have been talking about all these things so far, but can you give some practical advice to the listeners looking to integrate science and spirituality into their daily life?
Thank you for asking that question because the truth is that if we don't have practical advice on theory, it just remains that beautiful knowledge that is a dusty book that we never open.
Yes.
So I definitely have practical advice. The first one is to educate yourself, attend lectures, explore, read books. There are so many things out there that we can learn. Now, be careful. Look for, like, I like to read, of course, Google is great, but I go to Google Scholar. Why? Google Scholar has articles that are peer reviewed. And so you have a lot of things that you can learn. And it has been, there is a lot of research behind.
Mhm.
Then have open mindedness, cultivate intellectual humility, which is we don't have the final answer. So be more humble, accept to participate in interfaith dialogues, attend scientific seminars, join discussion groups, do it with respect, do it with curiosity, do it with a sense of awe and wonder. Be a kid, like become a child again. You don't have to like play marbles. You just can be a child with just being at awe. And also, journal. Journal what you're feeling. And now I'm saying that, and to be honest, I started so many times journaling, and then I either wake up late. I mean, I'm Latin after all, so I wake up late. I'm like running headless chicken, like that, and I forget to journal. But try, if you can, try to journal. And the journaling is something that you don't need to do it like 3 hours. Just if you just put like 2 or 3 words, you will remember what you meant. Another thing is artistic expression. And that is like by doing any type of art, music, dance, painting, anything, also takes you to the other side of your brain, right? Not the analytical, it's the creative. And it's this creation that makes us be in our higher state. And so, for example, in my case, I love to paint. I stopped doing that because life had a lot of demands in my life. But I tell you, I have it there ready, and I'm going to start in a couple of weeks painting again. Mm-hmm. And I also like to compose music. And so I'm going to start doing that. I have to get my keyboard. Why? Because when we are doing something with art, we are tapping into this deeper intelligence, which is the subconsciousness. We're tapping into the creative godlike force, and that is huge. Practice gratitude, and then embrace uncertainty, and that is huge, because sometimes we just want to have everything certain. Accept that we don't know what will happen today. I will say, walk in faith and not in sight. Doesn't matter whether you are religious or not, either spiritual or not. But you have to have faith, right? When you are driving in the interstate, you have to have faith that your tire doesn't explode. You have to have faith that the car next to you doesn't cross the lane and there is a huge disaster, right? So there is faith that we don't have to say, no, I don't believe. Okay, you may not believe in some spiritual or religious fields, but if you don't have faith in the unseen, you cannot live. You cannot do anything, right? So embrace uncertainty and have faith.
Thank you. That's a wealth of practical advice you gave there. So take your pick. There were so many there. Beautiful. Thank you, Cristina. Thank you so much for a really enlightening conversation and deeply engrossing, I will add. I have to ask you my two, because I always ask my guests on the podcast, my two quick questions in the end. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
Personal development. It's all. If we don't develop, we don't grow. If we don't grow, we don't expand. If we don't expand, we die. So personal development is just that. It's life. And now when we say personal, is own it. It's not mass development. No, it's not technological development. It's personal development. It's just you and yourself. How would you want to meet yourself when you're about to leave this body to become spiritual? Not spirituality, like when we die, when we go to the other realm. So personal development is what spiritual suit we want to wear when the moment comes to go. And that is, to me, personal development. How do I want to look in my spirit when I'm ready to go?
And the hypothetical question, if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice?
2 years ago. Oh, it's very simple. It's 2 years ago.
What would you tell her? What's one piece of advice you would give that young Cristina?
Oh, I wish I could have that 18-year-old. I was so... I had a pure heart, which I still keep. But unfortunately, I had too much volume outside. So I not because I was living in Buenos Aires, which has a lot of volume, really noisy, and everybody's the horn and all that. But I really had a lot of noise. I did not listen to me. So everybody knew more than I do in my perception. Everybody was better than I was. Everybody was more beautiful than I was. Everybody was more successful than I was. Everybody was more intelligent. So I acted like that. I acted like I was completely behind the scenes for everything. So if you go back in time, I never raised my hand in anywhere. I did very well at school because I was always studying, but I didn't have many friends. I was hiding behind my books, and I did not raise the volume of my voice. It took me decades, Aggie, decades to put the volume up. So what I will tell myself is don't, I won't say waste, because again, nothing is wasted. There were lessons. If I had not done that, probably today, you and I wouldn't be talking. I would be doing something different. So I would say, if you want to go faster to meet where I am today, so many decades later, listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. It's okay, you have a little bit of voice around. Lower the volume. Listen to yourself. That is what I would say to myself. Listen to yourself, Cristina. You'll go faster to meet me.
I want to thank you very much for this conversation, Cristina, and to wish you all the best with your mission and everything you are going to do from now on. And I know, because we have spoken, so I'm it is exciting for me also to know what is happening. I want to wish you all the very best, and I will leave it to you for your final parting words for today.
I will say I would have never been able to do this if I had not had faith that I could contribute to society. So I will say, thank you, Aggie, for your personal development podcast. Thank you for inviting. I've been following you. You have invited the top of the top in so many fields. Thank you for doing that. We need that. We need to hear different voices. We need to hear those voices that have done some self-awareness journey, so that we don't necessarily have to do that, right? It's like, well, if you know that street will lead you to the cliff, just learn from whoever did that and fell off the cliff. Don't go there and fall off the cliff, right? So what you are doing with your podcast is that you're raising awareness so that we can say, I never thought of that. Okay, that's wonderful. That's a great idea. So my parting words is people like you that make people like me want to contribute more to society. So thank you, Aggie, for everything you do for us.
If you have enjoyed this episode, can you find one person that you think it would add value to and share it with them? I would really appreciate you. Not only does this help grow the show, it also helps you add value to people you care about. Thank you. And before I leave you for today, how would you like a free copy of my book, 88 Actionable Insights for Life? The book is based on the conversations with notable people I had doing this podcast, and as my listener, you can get it for free. It is my present to you. Go to agikeramidas.com/88 for your copy. Until next time, stand out, don't fit in,